Today we are excited for this public newsroom because you are here at Christ Lutheran Church. We thank them so much for allowing them to open up our doors for us to come in. And we will be, of course, addressing the issue that I think a lot of folks in the city have been grappling with or talking about in regards to asylum seekers here in Chicago.
To kind of give us a picture of why we're here, how this all started, Pastor Tom, would you mind giving us a bit about who Christ Lutheran Church is, and more specifically talking about the ethos behind what you all do and the mission?
Yeah. So the church is 112 years old. 1911 we started, so we've been in Albany Park a long time. And so I've been here 36 years. And we're a church. We are a spiritual community centered around the life teachings of Jesus and trying to put that into act that out in everything that we do as a church. So we have just a lot of different ministries in the church for folks who are part of this, but also a lot of things in the community. I have a lot of things that Jesus said that are coming to mind that kind of crystallize who we are. But love God, love neighbor. He said, that's what it's all about. And we really try to live that out. One of the verses that really has just become so important to me in recent years is when he said, "From those to whom much is given, much is expected." And I just feel that so much for me personally and for this church. Like we have been given so much, and we have such treasures. So we just really need to dedicate our lives to serving others, but living out that call to love and justice. So in the ministry here, we have a lot of partners that we do things with. A lot of anti-deportation, a lot of welcoming immigrants and refugees. We have a food pantry. There's just a number of partners that we are well connected with. And one of the great things is many of them meet right in this room, too. They don't have their own space. So it's like, what a great opportunity to have a church and just open it up. So all of these activists are regularly coming through here. Actually, I didn't tell you this, but we were known as the Lefty Church Basement, which I've always felt kind of privileged to have that. But anyway, so that's sort of who we are and some of the activities in the community that we're involved in.
That was great, Pastor Tom. Thank you. I guess this question is for Veronica and Rhoda. So whoever goes first, you can paper, rock, scissors that if you want. But who are you as individuals, and how did you originally become connected to Christ Lutheran Church that brought you to this point that you are right now to even doing this work with the church or within the church?
She's pointing at me. I'll go first. Outside of CLC, I am an occupational therapist. So that's my work, and most recently I've been working with young babies and children at risk of developmental disabilities and their families through the state's early intervention program. And prior to that, I started the occupational therapy program at Alexian Brothers Bonaventure House, which is a transitional residence for individuals with addictions and HIV/AIDS in the Lakeview neighborhood. And then this past year, I got my doctorate and moved to teaching full-time. So I'm at DePaul University. I'm a clinical assistant professor there. And so that's my work life. And then as far as how I got connected to the church, my husband, Eric, who's also part of this core team, when we moved into this neighborhood, I was pregnant with my firstborn. And we hadn't belonged to a church, but we kind of stumbled upon this one. And we're just really moved by what we heard and the people in the community and just the strong focus on social justice. So we figured we would give this a go. And now it's, over 20 years later, we just said goodbye to my younger daughter who just went off to college this fall. And so we're an empty nest. But I know that we're super grateful that we raised our kids here in this community and just the many opportunities that they have been shown here and just the guidance. It's probably one of the best things that we've done for them.
How have I gotten connected to the church? So I've lived on this street across from the church for over 25 years at this point. And Christ Lutheran Church has truly been a loving neighbor to our community. I've known Tom for probably that whole time. And the reputation of this being the lefty basement church, is that what you said? That's how I got introduced to the church's work. I actually have been a longtime activist, Philippine solidarity work. Many of our meetings were here in this basement. A lot of political educations here in this basement. And also have worked in education justice for a very long time, which is also how I know Dee through that work. And also have been here in this basement for those meetings. And I remember a specific story of actually being on this stage talking about pushing for an elected school board here in Chicago. And now we have an elected school board coming in next year. So the kind of catalyst that this space has in terms of social justice is it is a catalytic space. And I just feel such a close connection here. Plus, I also volunteer at I came into this work because I volunteered monthly at the food pantry, unloading 9,000 pounds of food at least every month. And it's a fantastic, joyous time, I have to say. And you get your weight-bearing exercise in there, too. So, okay.
The sign-up sheet is in the back.
Yeah, also, just keep that in mind for later. No, thank you all so much for giving us that intro. I think it's always really nice to know how folks get connected to this work and not just like, we've always been here. No, we haven't. Has been our pathway to getting here. But bringing it back to you, Pastor Tom, because I really want to hear this story again. We know Christ Lutheran Church is housing these 5 families. I want to know and want to help everyone provide that context of how did you even get connected to these families?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. So of course, the church, but just part of the DNA of being a Christian is welcoming the stranger. It's just throughout the Bible, throughout Jesus' teaching. So it's just part of who we are. And we've really been privileged many times over the years to welcome refugees into the community. So it wasn't a big leap for us to engage in this ministry. But here's how it went. In early May, I got a invitation from a couple of neighbors to come to a meeting because they said, we're starting to have migrant folks come into this community. So I went to the meeting. Our alderwoman, Rosana Rodriguez, was a key part of that, and a few constituents from other organizations. So we were at this meeting, and we were talking about, a few folks are actually at the police station, and that just got me thinking. What is our role here to welcome the migrant? And then a few days later, I learned that there were families at the police station, and 2 of the women sleeping on the floor were pregnant. And that was enough for me to say, you know what, we actually have a building, and I think we could take folks in. So I texted everybody on our church council. I said, I think we could do this. What do you think? And by the time I heard from the last person, it was 6 o'clock. So then I texted Rosanna, and I said, we want to take families into the church. And she said, well, okay, when? I said, how about now? And she said, I'll meet you at the police station in an hour. So Rosanna was there with her vehicle. Anthony from the police council was there with his vehicle. I was there with mine. So we loaded up our vehicles. And the next day we brought another family. So we had 5 families. But I do remember, as we walked in that night with families who didn't really know where they were going and what this was about, just like we said, please come with us. As we walked in, it dawned on me, we really don't have a plan. And not only that, we don't actually have any volunteers. We don't have any money. We don't have anything. All we have is a building and the conviction that our faith compels us to welcome the stranger. So, and that has kind of come back to me over and over. Like, I think if we would have taken the time to make a plan, we would have come up with all the reasons we couldn't do this. And I'm so glad we said, act now, plan later, and and here we are. So that has been, and in my Lutheran tradition, there's a phrase that comes up. The phrase is sin boldly. And we just decided, let's just have at it. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. There will be a lot of problems, but we're going to sin boldly and do this. So that got us started, and I mean that was 4 months ago. And I will say as a side note, so that's really our focus tonight. I think is the families living here. But the next day, some of the folks in that conversation said, you know what, we're going to be needing a space to store some supplies. We're probably going to get some supplies coming in. I said, why don't you come on by? And so there were 3 of us, and none of this was here. It was all tables and chairs. And I said, I think back in that corner, we could probably set up a table or 2 tables even that we could just, pile supplies on. And 4 months later, we have a lot more than a corner, but again, we really didn't have a plan. We just said, we have space. All the other people around the table, people of really goodwill, didn't have a space, and that was just the one, thing that we could bring to the table as a church. Let's open our space up and be, a hub for all of this work going on.
It's a few things that stand out in that, and even from my past conversations. One, especially that kind of counters a lot, especially in the context. I know I work a lot in academia, and so has Rhoda, right? Usually you don't do anything unless you've theorized, thought about it, researched it. I'm dead serious, right? So the MO of things is usually it's actually backwards to move in action without actually doing quote unquote research, right? But how do you research something like this, right? A phenomenon that comes, right? How do you actually research that? Sometimes you do just have to go on faith and just do what you need to do, right? And so this is a prime example of that. Other thing that I'm thinking about, to move on to our next question, of course, Pastor Tom, you said, a lot of this is rooted in the philosophy and the living of Jesus, right? And, respect your neighbor, do unto others, right? Actually using yourself as a vessel, to do the work, right? But even, Jesus didn't do anything alone, right? He had these 12 dudes he rode with, right? And the reason I'm saying that is because I think there's this other piece that I don't want folks to walk away with, just like Christ Lutheran Church did it all on their own, right? And just on their own. So I guess this other piece is what are the collaborators? What have collaboration looked like? How have collaborators came on board and help you do this thing that you are a part of this broader collaborative effort to try to figure out how can we address this issue?
So I'm just going to piggyback on the story of not having volunteers, just bringing the families in, not having any place for them to sleep or, so on and so forth. I mean, we have the building, right? But I kind of came into this probably shortly thereafter, Tom, and this is a funny story, but this relates to our collaborators. And so one of the churches that has been doing this work for a long time, is Emily here? Emily Wheeler? Okay. Is Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church, and they've been running a shelter since the 90s there. And Emily came. She became the new program manager of what is now called Faith Community Initiative, and was so gracious to come on I remember it was a really hot June day with another group called Bethany House, and it's actually somebody who I've known from a long time in our activist circles, Darlene Gramina, and they came to talk to us about how they do this work in supporting migrants, because obviously there are organizations and people who have done this before, and so they were just so generous in sharing this. So one of the questions was, well, how many, just about how many families they take care of a year, and how do they do that? And Emily said, oh, we support one, this was before, they do more now, but we usually support one family for a full year and transition them into housing. And I looked at Tom as like, we have 5 families. And so while I was a little bit shocked and like probably in paralysis at that point, I mean, the fact that they were so generous, they shared their templates of, how they did this work, shared documents, shared letters, and any of the resources they had. So we built a lot of some of the infrastructure in terms of, some of the initial intake forms for families. We didn't even know any emergency contacts for any of the families. Like, what if something happened? We didn't know who to call. I mean, some basic stuff like that. And so they provided that kind of infrastructure. We built on that. But we also, Tom, you're being very humble in terms of, the way in which this church has built long-term relationships with community organizations is profound. If you go to the church office next door and you look at the mailbox, you will see Albany Park Defense Network on there, Autonomous Tenants Union, Isaiah's Gifts of Hope. I mean, just organization after organization, and this being their mailing address. And that's not just a mailing address. I mean, this is really a hub of community activity and community-based care. And so what you see here is not just a pop-up. This has been built over years and years, knowing that organizations can come here and rely on this church to do the kind of work that they want to do here, and building a different kind of community and ward and caring for each other. And this is the result of this work is coming out of the CCC 33, that's what it's called now, Community Care Collective of the 33rd Ward, which again, like in terms of the organizations here in this ward, comes out of a long history of mutual aid, organizing, political organizing, and it fits really well. So in terms of, I don't know if I didn't name all the organizations, but we should. Organized Communities Against Deportations, OCAD is dealing with the legal aspect and processing the asylum claims and getting legal representation in partnership with Beyond Legal Aid. So they've been able to handle that aspect. Again, Faith Community Initiative hired a case manager recently who's been supporting the families here at this church and also across the churches that are hosting families, helping make sure that they're applying for the benefits that they're qualified for, getting the medical, meeting their medical needs as much as possible. There's Latino Union that's been here for a long time, Kedzie Center, and we could name more. Providing mental health services, Kedzie Center has been a huge resource here, especially, the trauma of the multiple traumas that people experience in the journey here. And so we have a really amazing community here in terms of those resources, and really had turned this, oh my gosh, what did we do, into, okay, and Veronica has always reminded us about, we have many assets in this community. Like, we may feel that there's so much scarcity, but we have such an abundance in this community. And so just taking advantage of those resources we have here, and also the deep relationships that the church already had because of its justice-oriented mission and serving the community in that way. So,
wow, so many. Yeah, I think it's such a transformative space of like how many people just walk by. I mean, just thinking about last Thursday when we were here, it was like, hello, who are you? Oh, I'm this person. I'm here to see this person. Oh, I'm here to drop off these things. Or like, hey, I have someone that can do this donation. And there's just so much going on and so quickly pacing, and people getting connected was really cool to see in person. But I do want to hear about specifically, and you Pastor Tom, you talked a little bit about Rosana just kind of being like, okay, what time do you want to do this? Okay, I'll be there in an hour. Let's go. I got my car. Let's do this. But I think there's this really rare thing here where sometimes, we elect these elected officials, but they don't really do or support communities in the way they say they will once they're in office. But I do think there's a really rare case here where you have someone that's very active, trying to find ways to connect others and support, and very much on the ground. And so I want to hear a bit about how it's been working with Alderwoman Rosana and kind of playing a role in this collaborative network? Really open to anyone that wants to answer this.
So, are folks here from other wards? Just out of curiosity, how many of you are from? Okay, well, I guess I better. In my opinion, we really have the best alderperson in the city. But don't tell your alderperson I said that. I mean, she's just on fire, and she is always on the front lines, always fighting for everyone in the community, not one group pitted against another. So, I mean, she has been nothing but a resource. And I mean, these are hard times in the city. My heart aches for Brandon, our mayor, and our former state senator, his deputy mayor, and all the older people. I mean, this is a hard time. There's really no good options before them. But, I mean, she has been relentless, as I think some others have too. And I can't tell you how good that feels, because we're in a collective that relates to some other collectives. And I do get a sense the older people are just like sort of hoping the issue won't come into their ward, hoping they really won't have to deal with it so they can just do other stuff. Well, she's on this all the time. I text her, about the folks at the church. I say, what do you hear about, them being in line for rental assistance? Okay, I'm on it. I'm going to get to my staff. We'll get back to you. And within a day, I'll hear back from her. There was a time a little while ago, I texted her some kind of question like that. She texted back right away. She said, well, actually, I'm in Puerto Rico, but I'll get back to you tomorrow. I mean, on vacation with her family. So we've been blessed. And whatever ward you're in, I hope your older person is as on fire about this, because when we're working in this partnership, it's hard, but it's going to be so much more effective working with our city officials.
Ditto.
Yeah, good. Sound like I have an actual public servant, you know what I'm saying, more than like a politician, which is good to hear. I mean, because I think even last week when we were here, you was telling you like how they have actually helped with just like loading things, unpacking things, like helping with families, right? So like an actual servant. So that's really beautiful to hear. One thing, when we were here last week, we stayed for the dinner, right? And the dinner that you all had, but it was more than just dinner, like business was getting handled like during the dinner, right?
Can we provide a bit of context for folks of like who's at this dinner, what's going on? Yeah.
Can one of y'all, because I could go into that, but can somebody just give like the context of the dinner, and then I would get like into the question.
Yeah, so every 2 weeks, just all of the families, we gather with all of the families, and we have a community dinner where, members of our core volunteer team are there and the families are there. And it's just a chance to kind of catch up, just have some general announcements, have a little bit of fellowship. And then just recently, we this past week, invite the families to share with one another what they've learned about different things. So we had a conversation about bank accounts this past Wednesday, where they shared their experience, opening up bank accounts, and what banks take, what kinds of IDs, what kind of fees, and they're very resourceful, and they found out a lot of good information, and we were able to learn from them, what that experience was like for them, and then what those resources are out there for other migrants, who might need them. But yeah, so these are just regular opportunities for us to gather together and just kind of feel like a community, and also just like catch up and touch base. So that's the background of that.
Right. And so one thing, because this question is for you actually, Veronica. So one thing we noticed like doing that dinner is there's an interesting role that you played and like your husband played to a certain extent, is almost creating, like facilitating the conversation that creates a scaffold for them to become acclimated in Chicago, assimilate in this new place. And just that whole process, like, what are some things that you have learned in regards to like handling interpersonal families, handling relationships, handling personalities, all these different things that have come into place that are also have helped you into helping folks like assimilate into this new country that they're in. So like, what are some of the learning moments you had?
Yeah,
from
I
this
mean,
experience?
so many, and that's my husband Eric in the back there. Yeah, he's part of the core team as well. Yeah, I mean, it's been a little mind blowing, and I don't even remember. I was the last one actually of after Tom and Rhoda had gotten pulled into this work. I don't even remember I just remember stepping in and, oh, we're doing this, like what's going on there. So it's moved really, really quickly. And, one of the things that's interesting, as Tom mentioned, one of our big assets is space. It's incredible to have this much space, like with this building. And it allows us to house families. And in doing so, it allows us as a volunteer team to get to know these families, as individuals. And once you move beyond, the basic foundational needs of, food, safe shelter, health, it gets even trickier, figuring out like, well, what are those things that people need? And so we've kind of we've begun to organize ourselves and think of things sort of in terms of pillars. There are those basic things like the necessities, but health and immigration. But then we have an occupational pillar, and within that, there are 3 areas that we're checking in with families on. So one is the ability to obtain and sustain decent employment that's going to be able to, provide for your family and work towards your goal of independent living within a year, which is our hope. So there's that. And then for the minors among our families too, getting into school, fitting into school, which is a lot tougher than we might have thought. And then secondly, becoming proficient in English. So we do provide English classes here at the church, and there's some barriers for people tapping into that and, just figuring out what's going on there and what else can we do, because that is an important piece. And then the third piece is helping families integrate into the community. And so that's a little, softer and fuzzier, because it includes things like, making friends and knowing how to get around and making use of local resources and problem solving. And, and if you, imagine whatever the last experience you had being new anywhere, right? Maybe like a new job or something, and multiply that exponentially by however much, because they're not just new in one context, it's their whole life. And, we know it takes weeks of orientation to get competent at anything. And so providing cultural ambassadors, but then also shifting our focus, as we're like that example from the Wednesday dinner, to see how we can learn from the families and work collaboratively with them so they can teach us the best way to support them. So that's the tricky piece. And so then in addition to the bi-weekly dinners, we'll have a volunteer who's going to be meeting with families on a monthly basis to touch base on those pillars. So that's an example of kind of what we're experimenting. I mean, it is just a giant trial and error. I mean, next month you could check in with us and we're like, oh yeah, that was a stupid plan. We're going to try something else. But the big idea that I think I do want to, I think we want to hold on to is this idea that these families themselves are assets. They have assets and they have gifts to give, and we are, we are obligated to work with them to figure out how to tap into that.
Yeah, and I think you're already starting to talk about this, but I love being at the dinner and seeing you just asked. So Veronica did this really cool thing of just having an agenda for families of here are the things we're going to talk about. And one thing was learning about how folks were opening bank accounts and really going through each one. What bank do you have? Okay, what did you need to open that? And just gathering them and really, okay, how did we do this? And putting this information up to kind of compile and have a resource. But I think this really gets to this thing of there's not things that they have to learn, but there are things we have to learn from folks that are coming here. And so just wanting to think about, like, are there any things that you all think that these migrant families have to share, or things we should be learning from them?
I mean, for myself, hearing their stories, it's like teaching us about resilience and courage in a way that's so profound. I mean, traveling here with little children. So that's just, it gives me a lot of perspective, so much respect for what they've been able to, endure, so that they can literally make a better life for themselves and their families. And I mean, that is also my immigrant story, of my parents, but it does, being here so long and, being in the United States, there isn't that kind of perspective we have. And it triggers also a questioning that I don't think we get too comfortable here, right? And so there's a questioning that we have of ourselves and our government and our society as to why this is happening. And I think, maybe that's a different public newsroom, but I think that those are the questions that, the relationships we've built with the families here trigger in me, that we have to take into a different direction of action and questioning of the higher ups, for example, as to why this is happening. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to echo that I just it's been really incredible hearing all of the stories, and and that's just kind of for me just triggered like wanting to learn more about places folks are coming from, the journey, the socio-political climates of there, and their expectations, assumptions of us and our assumptions, and it's just a whole incredible dynamic, and yeah, I mean, every day my mind is just filled with just so many questions, but also just like different pieces of information, and yeah, I think there's so much that we can learn, and it's hard to put into words sometimes.
Yeah, that definitely is a testimony, to the power of coming in contact with people, right, that are coming from different spaces, different places, and a whole different perspective, right? And it seems like, especially for what you just said, Rhoda, it kind of like forces almost like an existential inquiry in yourself, like who am I within this context, within this country, and how does some of this play into how folks are having to force themselves to come to this country now, right? I think it does make you look more critical at like the conditions and the roles that we play within those conditions. I think one thing I guess I would like to ask is, in the short term, like, so for right now, for folks that are interested in what you all are doing, what are ways that folks can assist or like volunteer or like help in any way?
Well, I would say, so folks in 33rd Ward, the 33rd Ward Collective really is the way to connect with the folks at the police station, Brands Park, North Park Village. And there is, I decided not to look at the messages in my Signal thread this morning until this afternoon. There were 189 messages. I mean, that's all people are saying. I'm going over there. I'm taking somebody to the doctor. I'm taking somebody to school. The school won't take them because they moved. I mean, it's just nonstop. So if you're in this ward, we can give you the link to the 33rd Ward Collective. But, I mean, the amount of volunteering that it takes is enormous. And I'll be honest, some of the folks are looking a little tired. And, well, we were tired when there were 30 in the police station, and then when there were 50, and now there's over 90. And we haven't hit the peak on this. I mean, it's the more buses are going to be coming in every day than have been. So, if you are in this ward, please, I give you the link to sign up, because volunteering will be critical. I mean, the city just cannot do what we're doing here. I'm not saying about the church, and we do it so much better to the point where, I mean, I don't mean to diss the city here, but we had some people at the police station who had been, sleeping on the floor. We're bringing meals to them. We're taking their kids to school. So they got moved to one of the new shelters, and a number of them came back the next day and said, "We really liked it better at the police station. The care that you were giving here was better than we're getting there. Can we stay here?" So, I mean, that's just profound. But I will say also, I mean, this is going to get expensive, and the city, when someone's in a shelter, will be presumably taking care of most of the expenses there. But here, it is a lot. I was just looking through all of the stuff, so I've been buying a lot of things for the collective. I just added up before I came here, about $10,000 we've spent in 4 months. We bought so many mattresses, and we ran Amazon out of the blue folding mats. They're out. Now we're buying the pink folding mats. I'm kind of proud of that. I look at Amazon like, yes. We're filling our police station with mats, but I just bought $800 worth of blankets. So there's a lot of donations, probably not so much clothing, but other things that we appreciate, especially new underwear, new socks, gently used shoes. Now we're getting into some warmer clothing needs. So there is a way to donate in this collective funds. Our church has a migrant support fund set up as well. For here at the church, I would say there's probably not a whole lot of ways for new volunteers to participate in the families we're working with. I think we probably have. I mean, we're doing a lot, but I don't know if you can disagree with me on that. But I mean, we have such a great core team. I mean, it's all a bunch of doctors here, so I mean, we're sitting pretty good.
I'll say, I mean, I definitely have been so grateful for other people stepping up from the church community and elsewhere. Like when we say, we don't know how we're gonna help with rides, or there was a need for food at one point for meals for a family, and folks stepping up and saying, I don't speak Spanish, but I can organize a volunteer chain, and I can escort folks to places, or I can do this, or I can take folks to the library and show them. So definitely welcome that, and I would say I think there's unlimited potential and like ways to get involved. Whether definitely the work of CC33, I mean they're incredible in how they're organized, easy to tap into through that link, and but I'm not turning away any help. I'm just gonna tell you that. Send them to me.
I just want to add, if it seems daunting to come into this work, because I mean it is a lot, but I have to say the Community Care Collective 33, these are organizers. Like, I mean, organize. And so you can plug in when you can and wherever you have an interest. I came into this because I wanted to fold clothes and do inventory. So it's not as daunting as it sounds, and you're coming into a collective. So even if you don't feel as an individual, well, what difference can I make? No, you're coming into a collective of people who are working together to try to make the lives of our whole community better. And in doing so, we're changing ourselves. And that's kind of, that is at the heart of that. So please come and help and do whatever you can. It really is some of the most fulfilling work I've done in my many, many years here in the community. So.
Yeah, and if you're in a different ward and you're not sure who to call, you can start with your alderperson's office, but there's almost certainly some kind of collective that really needs you. I mean, we're probably talking to the choir here. You're probably already doing things, but I mean, this is all hands on deck. I mean, our city has never faced anything like this, and we will. I mean, we will get through this. We are Chicago. We are a great city, and we're going to handle this crisis, but we'll handle it better if everybody steps up, says, "Here am I. Send me. Here's what I can do," and figures out how to, how to volunteer.
I think this one thing really sticks with me when we were talking last week, Pastor Tom, that you brought up. You're like, regardless if all of this gets figured out, folks are able to get housed, all of these things, like, despite that, like, we're never going to stop doing this work. And I thought that was something so special that you brought up. And so really thinking about, like, despite whatever the city is doing or whatever they decide to put together, but like you talked about how, this is never going to stop. You plan on continuing to do this work of like seeing the possibility of like being able to house people, being able to provide all these resources. And so just kind of to tie us all together, kind of what are long-term ways that you see of continuing this work without direct assistance from the city?
Well, I think there's a lot of. I mean, it's just incredible. This is in our ward. I think we probably have as much of a network as anywhere in the city. So we're really blessed on that. But there's a lot of feeling already of, well, what issue are we going to tackle next? Because we are an amazing team doing some outstanding work. Collaborating with one another and caring and building these communities of care in this neighborhood. So when we get through this crisis, there's plenty of other issues that we're going to want to be addressing together too. And I don't think folks are going to give up on the networks and the relationships that have been built here. I think we're going to figure out ways we're going to tackle other issues as well and keep this going.
One thing. I mean, this is also chiming in from something we said last week, and it's not to be dismal, but we did have this conversation. You just brought it up early. Folks are getting tired, right? And you can like see that, right? And it's this difference between someone saying like, "Yeah, I will come, by every other month or this one off time to like donate some clothes." But what is it? And I mean, and there's no answer. This is not even a question, I guess I'm asking. It's just something that we thinking about. The concept of like self-determination is really a hard concept, right? I don't think folks really understand like that type of endeavor. And it's just thinking about human capacity. It's one thing to get someone to come out and donate one time, but what does it mean to say, okay, we kind of need you to come out like every Thursday for like, we don't know how long, right? And so it's like, well, how long you need me for? We don't know how long we're going to need you for. We just need you to sign on indefinitely, right? I think that's when things hit like a glass ceiling because like folks have families, folks want to go on vacation. You know what I'm saying? Like people want to sleep, people want to live their lives, right? And I think that's where things get really tricky is that there's like a lot of folks when it comes to justice work engage in like the sprint of it. Right, that 100-yard, but it's like this a marathon, right? And we don't even know when the marathon going to end. And I think that's the deeper pill to swallow. That I don't think that's not a question. That's just something that we had brought up last week. That is like a real thing, right? This is not something that's going to go away like in a few months or next year, right? These situations are only going to grow and they're only going to become worse. And honestly, are going to take more from like us, especially if we're losing faith in the city, unfortunately, to do things, or we feel like the city doesn't even have the faculties, meaning like the mental fact, like to actually know what to do. They have all the resources, but don't know what to do. Something to think about, like what is that strength that we have that we can continue as for a sustained period of time, knowing that it would just be us that would be able to keep this thing going. So, yeah, I guess that's all just faith, really, huh?
Well, So yeah, that's true. I mean, we get tired, right? Like I can't, I mean, but this work can't be done unless you do it with others. I mean, I don't know if you all, Mariam Kaba's work, who's an abolitionist, like said, like something is like, it's not worth doing unless you're doing it with others. But it's like, it is about the collective. There's no way to sustain work. I mean, in this country, we're always, and in this kind of, political economic era, we're taught that pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It's all on you, individual, achievement, blah, blah, blah. That's not how we do this work, and that's not how we can do this work. And so when I say the strength of this is that even as an individual, you're going to come into a group that's working together trying to figure this out. And I think there's a real model here in the 33rd Ward where we have this strange ecosystem of, government officials communicating with nonprofits, but also groups that are just coming together as neighbors in mutual aid groups, trying to figure out how to take care of each other. I mean, it is, and then you have these institutions like Christ Lutheran Church, and it is these kinds of key community institutions that have really anchored a lot of this work. And so, like thinking strategically around what are those key justice, anchors in your community, this is one of them, and we're very lucky to have that. But again, like to do we know this is a long haul work. It's not like, there's a utopia and we've achieved it. No, it's in the process of changing our communities and ourselves in that we learn how to sustain the work. So let's drink some caffeine. Let's talk to each other. Let's be creative and take the leap of faith and take some action that may not work out, but may work out. We can do this. Being in this ward, I have hope for this city to be able to meet this crisis head on. So,
even if it's civil disobedience.
I'm not opposed to that, D.
But that's it. Can we give our guests a hand clap?